Structure may sound dry. It may sound like there's not much to think about in terms of structure, but structure is actually very important because structure is power. And when we think about what makes the powerful people of the world powerful, it really isn't necessarily money or resources. What it is it's the structures that are around them and those structures supporting them and keeping them where they are. And basically, in our world, the way we have it right now is that anybody who has money or power is at the top of the pyramid, and there are a whole bunch of people supporting them underneath, whether they want to support that person or not. And if those people quit supporting that person on the top, the person on the top will no longer be on top. Um, Structure is resources. So the way that resources travel around this world is a matter of structure. It's these networks. We live in a world where very few communities are self-contained anymore. So water, food, raw materials, finished materials, all those things flow around the world, and that's a matter of structure. We have certain set of structures the way the world is now, but that's not necessarily the way the world has to. Structures destiny, and structures also change. So the way things are structured is the way that they progress. There's a book that I read at one point that really had an impact on me that I think really talks about the importance of structure. Island of the Lost, the shipwreck at the edge of the world. And it's a true story. Sometime several hundred years ago, there was a deserted island, and there were two separate groups of sailors that were marooned on this island at the same time, and in separate incidents. So they were at opposite ends of the island. They never interacted with each other. They never even knew the other group was there. But they had very, very different destinies. So one group was shipwrecked on the island. They kind of built their own little society. They organized. They taught lessons every day. They taught each other their languages. They had like little church services. And they eventually, but they were able to repair the boat and make it back. So they basically rescued themselves. The other group was shipwrecked just a couple months later on the other side of the island, and they had turned to cannibalism before the week was up. In fact, it was so quick that the sole survivor said that he felt like people were just waiting. It was a group where nobody trusted each other, and nearly everybody was dead by the end of the first week. And they were dead not because of the dangers of the island, but because they killed each other. And it's a testament to the fact that it's not resources or circumstances that control what happens. It's how do we treat each other. And this same island, different parts of the island, but basically the same set of resources, same set of circumstances, resulted in very, very different destinies for the people. Really nice talking. So I'm going to divide this into 4 parts. Each part is going to have a different function. The structure I'm talking about is really it's kind of 4-part structure. I'm going to start here, and this is going to be kind of like the lost age. So I want to talk about this lost age, and there's kind of this concept, I think, for a lot of people that the past was a better time. And I think this sort of myth of the golden era is really what's animating what we call the mega movement. So there's this idea of make America great again. And there's this idea that America was great at some point in the past and that it's lost that status. And I think it's important to kind of interrogate that because America has always been a country that has had good sides to it, but has done a lot of bad things as a result. And the dominant structure of America in many of its areas of history, including this era, is a structure of greed, a structure of monopoly, meaning where all the control is in the hands of the few. The watchword of America is the pursuit of happiness. That's kind of enshrined in, I think it's the Declaration of Independence. And the thing about it, though, is that in a lot of ways, the pursuit of happiness prevents happiness. Because when we pursue happiness, a lot of times we're pursuing what we can acquire, what we can do for ourselves. Yeah. And that is not what makes people happy. There's also a lot of structures in kind of the so-called golden age, or um, continuing through to today, structures of racism, structures of prejudice. And those are things that have continually throughout American history exploited and oppressed various groups of people. America is also, even though it's a democratic country, it's also, for a long time, it's been an imperialist country, meaning that it's a country that throws its weight around in the world. And a lot of times, the things that preserve American interests are not the things that are good for people that we come in contact with. And there's a famous thought experiment in philosophy, and the thought experiment is, would you live a life of happiness if the price of that happiness was that there was a child somewhere, and that child had to live in misery to ensure your happiness? And the thing about it is that even though this is a thought experiment, it's really not a hypothetical, because a lot of the prosperity of America is founded on the misery of people in other places. And for the cheap clothing that we have, it's probably children in sweatshops somewhere that are stitching that together, and that's why it's so affordable for all of us. So it's important for us to remember that the goodness and the luxury of our life is not unconnected to bad things going on elsewhere in the world. And it's for that reason that I'm moving to square two now. It's for that reason that this season of deconstruction that we're in is not entirely a bad thing. You know, it really seems like a bad thing because there are a lot of bad people in it, let's say, or people making bad choices. But it's also undoing a lot of things, and in some sense, some part of that is good. One of the things is that the era that we are exiting was dangerous because a lot of times you couldn't tell your friends from your enemies. Mm-hmm. And sometimes the people that you thought of as your friends were really not doing you any good in the long run. And so the advantage of the era that we're in now is it becomes easier and easier to tell who your friends are and who your enemies are. And we're seeing that a lot of people who masqueraded as friends were never friends.